I am a vampire. You haven't been aware of my depredations. Because I have a system, one which avoids observation and detection. My lair, my castle, is an old storage garage. I sleep by day in an 8-foot metal shipping container hidden behind my conveyance, a white 2004 Saturn Ion. My ride is my cloak of invisibility. It's white, the most popular automobile color. All right, the most popular non-color. So it just blends into the background. It's old, too, but there are still a lot of ions around, making them rather ubiquitous. But the finishing touch is my collection of decals. Decals advertising all the major pizza places in town. Just slap a decal onto the side of the car, and voila! I'm no longer a guy driving around aimlessly in the middle of the night, but a 24-hour pizza delivery guy, and I'd be glad to deliver you something, or rather, take something from you, something hot and steamy, blood. For the blood is the life. My status as a pizza delivery person provides me with cover, but I also exercise discretion, considerable discretion. Of course, as a vampire, my greatest strength, as that old fool says in that old book, is that people don't believe in him. I mean me. Believe in vampires. Still, I confine my hunting, my activities, to the industrial area, the rail yards, and the poorer marginalized neighborhoods, where I can find victims, donors, ready meals, victims that won't be missed or missed much. And I can make a prey last for a long time, for several weeks if necessary. It's rather like dining on leftovers. The blood of these losers itself is an acquired taste. It's skunky and laced with alcohol and narcotics. But I've come to like it. It's a heady brew. Allow me to explain how the process works. Once I find a potential victim, I find a way to approach them, and as soon as possible, sink my fangs into their throat, which immediately paralyzes them. I then bundle them into the trunk of the Ion and return to the garage, where I can feast at leisure. My dinner is not technically dead, is even conscious, but is unable to move or to speak, and as I drain their blood, they eventually enter a twilight state and then die. Sometimes, when I drive around, I listen to them discussing missing 411 cases on Coast to Coast AM. People disappear, but then their bodies are later found in areas which were previously searched. Sounds like someone or something like me has been at work. Corpse disposal is relatively uncomplicated. I simply dump the bodies in alleys or behind closed or abandoned buildings, and when they are eventually discovered, death is invariably attributed to natural causes. And they never come back as vampires. Dissection by autopsy takes care of that. After all, who needs the competition? Not that the cause of death is given much thought, These are nobodies, after all. So I had a system, and it worked perfectly. Until some fool went and spoiled things. Some fool went and spoiled it all. Last month, a young professional woman, a lawyer, was walking back to her car alone after having spent a convivial evening with friends at one of the new brew pubs which had grown up in the industrial district, a place not far from my lair, actually. She never made it. Instead, she was torn to pieces. The news coverage was intense, and some nosy reporter noticed there had been a whole series of odd or mysterious deaths in the industrial area and the adjoining neighborhoods. My handiwork, of course. The forensic examinations had been rather cursory, as I knew they would be. After all, they were just derelicts and tramps, not lawyers or professional people. But I couldn't afford people in authority asking questions. So, I had to find him, and I was pretty sure it was a him. I bundled up my current meal. He would do for a while yet, and hit the midnight streets in search of someone. Someone new, someone who hadn't been there before, someone who stuck out. But after 4 weeks of searching, I came up with nothing. The streets were inordinately deserted. Inordinately deserted. Naturally enough. And the only humans I saw were a number of old tramps and stumblebums I'd seen many times before. Otherwise, nada. Eventually, my latest human buffet gave out and died on me. Oh well, he was getting a little ripe. Past his best before date. And so I had to go a-huntin'. After I took the garbage out, of course, I tossed the remains onto a dumpster behind a plumbing supply store. It was the night of the full moon, which painted the deserted streets in cold silvery light. Deserted indeed. Not even the usual derelicts were out, and the hookers had all vanished. Everyone was lying low. I started to get agitated. I can actually go several days without having to feed, but that doesn't mean I like it. If worse comes to worse, I can always resort to the blood of a feral cat, but that's pretty thin gruel. It was almost 3 a.m. when I finally scored. He was walking or shuffling up one of the semi-vacant streets near the public utilities complex. He was wearing an old raincoat and was bent over as if he was a hunchback, although I figured he was more likely crippled by arthritis. So, an old dude. But hey, I like my wine well aged, as long as it's red. Red! I considered my approach, but not for long. There was no one in the immediate vicinity, and the old soldier didn't look like he could run far, so I went for the direct approach. I pulled up a little ahead of him, so I might more easily place his body in the trunk. Exiting the ion, I said, as innocently as I could, "Are you okay, sir? Do you need any help?" And he attacked me. The gnarled old man exploded into action and slammed into me, hands outstretched, claws tearing into my shirt and into my flesh as his chest, matted with hair, with fur, pressed up against my face, blinding me. I tried to pull my head away, but my assailant was too strong. Superhuman. Because it wasn't human. It was a werewolf. It hadn't been crippled. It had been walking on all fours. It must have been the werewolf that murdered the lawyer, tore her to pieces. It had already torn my ear off by the time I managed to get my head free to stare into its open mouth and its tiers of razor-sharp teeth. And its hot charnel breath was like a blast from the pits of hell. I, too, have superhuman strength, but I was weak from lack of feeding and found I was no match for my cyclonic adversary, who put out one of my eyes with one of its filthy, jagged, ragged claws, just as I found my spot and sank my fangs into its throbbing jugular vein. The blood that squirted into my open mouth was pungent and steamy, invigorating and intoxicating. I felt myself reviving, just as the werewolf, in its death throes, sank its teeth into my neck, and with a shake of its massive shoulders, tore my head clean off. In death, the beast still had its jaw clamped on my severed neck. I was sentient, but with my head separated from my body, I was unable to move. I wasn't going to die, but already I could see some lightning in the east. Lightning in the east. Dawn would be here in less than 2 hours, and I'd be done for. Next day, local media reported the discovery of the body of an unidentified man near an abandoned car in the city's industrial area, and within 24 hours, the story was forgotten. Forgotten, probably because they didn't report the most interesting details. 1. The dead man was found lying on a pile of dust and bone fragments. 2. Near him were the partial remains of a human skull. 3. His body had been drained of blood. 4. The car, a white 2004 Saturn Ion, was registered to a Nicholas Armand, but no Nicholas Armand was living in the city, and his address turned out to be an abandoned garage. 5. Death was listed as from natural causes, as was the death of another unfortunate, found that morning lying in a dumpster behind a plumbing supply store. An unfortunate who had also been drained of blood. The moral of the story? Like Mother said, be careful what you eat. It just might not agree with you. If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring cryptids such as the Night Floaters, Werewolves, and the Black-Eyed Children. Please help me to get to 2,021 subs in 2021. Till midnight. Cheers!